Hello and welcome to the final League One podcast here on the Lower League Look for the season. And we've got the full gang here. We've got Jamie.
Hello.
We've got Seb.
Hello.
And we've got Callum.
Hello.
So it's the first time we've actually, I think, presented for... Well, I think the first time we've actually presented all four of us together. So let's see how this goes. This is going to be mayhem.
Convincing, yeah.
Absolute carnage. So the structure of this show, we're going to do A, B, C, D, or U grade for all 24 League One teams. We will then give our match of the season, any game you've watched this season in League One, a player of the season each, and then a team to watch for next season. So what we're going to do, we're going to get cracking straight away. We'll go to Seb first, and we'll start with Carlisle United for their grading of the season.
Wonder where I'm going to put this one.
Yeah.
I think it's quite obvious Carlisle finishing at 30 points. I've just put them as a U, bottom of the pile, and deservedly so. Yeah, 30 points after 46 games is pretty poor. And the performances deserve to be at the bottom and deserve to get a U grade as well. So, yeah, that was probably the easiest one out of the whole league table. I'm sure you guys will all agree as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give him an A star. I don't know about the rest of them.
I was going to say, I'll be a bit nicer and give him an F because I mean, obviously they were shocking, weren't they? But there were some signs towards the end of the season of a team that were already focusing on League Two for next year. So in terms of making the most of a bad situation, I'll give them an F. But they certainly have fucked it.
You've been nicer than I have. They got a U off me, and my description was just not good enough for League One. It was a League Two team in Owen Moxon, and he left in January. So
yeah,
bottom of every single chart other than expected goals, which was Shrewsbury. So
I mean, what I'll say is, I shat on them, and then the 1 week I didn't shit on them, they won, or was it something like that? So. I'm taking personal responsibility.
I'm pretty sure you predicted them to win 4 of the last 7 games altogether.
Yeah, just purely because vibes, isn't it? There you go.
So for Carlisle United, get 3 U's and an F. So that's not going to look very good on your old GCSE sheet. So well done, Carlisle United. The next one is Port Vale, and we'll go to Jamie first for Port Vale.
I mean, as a well-renowned Darren Moore fan, I have also given Port Vale a U. Just I love them in. For, I guess, a different reason than Carlisle. I guess Carlisle get a U just because they're really just so poor. Whereas I think Port Vale get one because they shouldn't really have finished as low as they had with like how big the team is and how like the people they've got there that they shouldn't have got relegated, but they were so poor through the season that obviously they ended up getting relegated fairly convincingly. So yeah, it was not even Darren Moore could save them when he came in. So it's a U from me for Port Vale.
Is it the same for you, Seb, as well?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I have to get this in pretty early. You know, the 7-0 opening day. Sort of set them off of a bad. But in fairness, there was one point after that result that Port Vale were ahead of Barnsley, but ever since then just sort of dipped all the way down into the league table. But I'm agreeing with Jamie. I definitely deserve a U over this season.
I feel like I'm nice. What I will do is I'll give the board an F, purely because they've somehow managed to attract, as much as you hate him, Jamie, a manager as good as Darren Moore. Like, he is a good manager, we know that. So how the fuck, like, that appointment still boggles my mind. The club as a whole is a U, but I'll be a bit nicer for the board and give them an F.
Callum's that teacher that everybody likes in school that just nicely grades your work and corrects it for you with the Tipp-Ex.
I don't like being mean.
Yeah, if this is what you're at the bottom, then blooming everyone will be a star.
This is where Portsmouth get a U.
Yeah, 6 plus, everyone will be a star.
Fucking, you wait until we get to Barnsley.
Steady on, Callum. Steady on.
In the gutter.
So I've also gone Port Vale for a U for the reasons that have all been discussed. So the next one on the list, Fleetwood Town, and we'll go to Callum first for this one.
I give them an E probably. They gave it a good go, didn't they? They weren't as shite as the rest, even though they're only 2 points better off than Port Vale. But and like, put it this way. E is still a fail in it. So, like, if you're talking grading, E is still technically a fail. So before you all shit on me for being the Easter Bunny, right, I will not take flack on being a kind-hearted person.
I mean, that's one way of putting it. I've gone for an F. I did, to be honest. I was looking through it, and I put it down as an E, mainly because I've sort of been like quietly impressed by Charlie Adam in that because I was expecting a complete failure, and he's been relatively okay, and I think he should be fine next season in terms of they should be pushing on the door in terms of trying to get in the playoffs next season in League Two. So that's the reason I was going to give them an E, but then I gave them an F anyway. So they just weren't good enough for that first part of the season under Lee Johnson. That was really what did them in the end. And then Charlie Adams done okay, but just not picked up enough points. So yeah, they've an F for. I mean, you can't give them anything more than an E, really, can you? In the fact that they've been relegated, so it was an F for me for Fleetwood.
Yeah, I'm in agreement as well. I think I would have given them the U had it not been for Charlie Adam. I think Charlie Adam, although he took so long to get his first win, he did get quite a couple of bouts. He got a couple of good draws at home as well against some good sides. So there's promising signs certainly, but they're in the relegation spots for a reason. Yeah, so F. In going with Callum, F is still a fail. But yeah, we'll give him credit.
I've actually given them an E. I've gone more off statistics, other than XG conceded, which they actually were the worst in the league. Expected goals, they were mid-table. I think the quality of the squad, obviously they've had their issues off the pitch with their owner being in prison. So I've given them an E just purely because I think other factors have played a part in their relegation. Lee Johnson being one, being sacked, 3 times this season?
Do you feel like just throwing that one in as a bit of garnish at the end? Oh, and the owner's in prison, by the way.
It's somehow still not the worst owner in the EFL.
Yeah, we'll get onto them a bit later on. Yeah. So yeah, I've gone for an E for Fleetwood. Next one is Cheltenham Town. We'll start with Jamie.
Yeah, I felt a bit harsh giving them an E, but then I remember they have been relegated because I don't think Darryl Clark's done a bad job, really, all things considered. But I guess really it's just like a little bit too late, wasn't it, in the season? And maybe they're a little bit unfortunate to get relegated in the end, only a couple of points in it, but just, I mean, they'd not scored in about, was it 10, 15 games start of the season?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, you're never going to stay up, are you, if you can't score for the first 12 games of the season. So yeah, I gave them an E and I felt a bit bad about it, but then I did realise at the end of the day they've gone down. So.
Yeah, I think Darryl Clark's actually done a really good job. I think he's gone under the radar, in fairness, and to get to the last week of the season, having had that poor start, like Jim mentioned, I think full credit to him. Sort of clawed it back. Ultimately, didn't claw it back enough, but you have got to applaud the job he has done. I've gone for an E as well. Based on that, yes, they were relegated, but they put up a jolly good fight right to the end.
Yeah.
You kind of want to split the grade in half, don't you? You want to give them like a fucking U minus, don't you, for the first few games of the season, and then you want to give them a D, maybe even a C for the rest of it, because they give it a bloody good go, didn't they? But yeah, I'll probably have to agree with an E. It probably seems a fair reflection, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think E's all round, just pure. I think it would, if they stayed up, I'd probably give them a C, but just purely because they have been relegated. I think an E grade is fair, and next season will be quite interesting for them. Obviously, they're going to lose. They've lost Long, they've lost Circum, they're going to lose Lloyd. Will Ferry's up in the air as well. Southwood's gone. Nobody knows about Darryl Clark, so they may struggle again next year as well. Next one is Burton Albion, and this one should be quite interesting. I'm going to start with Callum for his love affair with Burton Albion for this one.
Burn them. Genuinely, for a team that has, I mean, obviously growing up around Burton, I kind of feel like I have a bit of insight into it. They have got the best training facilities in the country. Like they train at the home of the Euro 2024 winners this year.
Oh, no.
Like,
they train in France.
Hilarious. Yeah. I don't know. like they've got such a good basis of a club, and it just feels like they keep fucking it up and getting worse and worse and worse. Like I almost feel like you've kind of got to give them an E, maybe even an F. Fuck it, I'm going for an F because I hate them. Like you've got to give them an F because they've got such a good basis, but they just keep fucking it up. They're so frustrating. You're just like, get your shit together, man, and they just don't. And their pitch is an abomination as well. Like, anyway.
You nicked what I was going to say. I was going to say an F for the pitch, but then for the actual team, I've given them a D in that maybe because they've stayed up. I think I was basing this a lot on like league position, in that if they one position lower and it's an F, isn't it? But the fact that they've stayed up, I've given them a D, which I think is probably a bit generous because they're a very nothing team. It's a bit harsh on any Burton fan. I don't doubt there are any Burton fans listening after what Callum just said. But if there are, I've been slightly harsh. It's like a regression because they've been like slowly dripping down the table since they came down from the Championship. So yeah, I've sort of talked myself out of the D I've gave them, and maybe it should be an E, but it's been either way a poor season.
Yeah, and I've gone with an F. I just. Yeah, for a team like Burton, you know, not particularly sort of. We know they're not going to be challenging for the top 8, top 6, top 4. You know, in that top half, I think they've been really disappointing this season. Under both managers, really. And I do find the relationship with the new manager, the Martin Passon, a little bit frictious, really. And I found that one quite interesting. Obviously, they didn't win any of the last 3. They only survived on the last day because of results elsewhere in that last midweek of the season. So that all is a little bit of interest, a little bit interesting, really.
I will point out they were in the top half a third of the way through the season. They were 15th after the halfway point, and they were still like avoiding relegation on the last day. It wasn't even particularly tight at the bottom towards the end. Like, they had a good start to the season, but they just fucked it up. I feel like my passionate hatred for Burton is really getting in the way of this podcast now.
Well, you mentioned sort of like the start of the season. I thought that the Dino, the lad they had before they brought Patterson in, I thought he was a little bit hardly done by, really, because he's a perfectly solid League One manager, and I do hope he gets another job. I don't know why I've got a bit of a soft spot for him. I don't want to upset
Cam too much. He's off his tits. That's what it is.
Steady on.
I think he's a bit, a bit libelous. I think he's a bit, maybe a little bit harder. Maybe that's why I've been so generous and give them a D, in that they started off quite well, even if it did peter out. But,
yeah, I agree. I have given them an F. Second lowest league scorers behind Shrewsbury, joint with Cambridge, and they survived because there was obviously all that stuff around Stevenage and Steve Evans, and that seemed to have played a part. They then somehow beat Reading and then got thumped on the last day by Fleetwood. So I think they've been extremely lucky that there was 4 worse teams than them this season. Yeah. And if Cheltenham had Darryl Clark the whole season, we may be talking about a different story. So I've gone with an F, and I have a rather embarrassing thing about Burton Albion. I bet on them to get top 6 this season.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. I don't know why. You know, when you just pick out 2 players that they purchased, and it's like, oh yeah, and you don't look at the rest of it. Yeah, that was a rather big mistake.
You look at they bought Cole Stockton, didn't they? That was the big one. Everyone
Cole
was
Stockton,
thinking,
Mark Helm.
All the stats people were just like, "Oh my god, they've signed Cole Stockton. If he can do that at Morecambe, look at what he can do at a team like Burton." And he did nothing.
Then he wanted to leave halfway through.
Yeah.
I think their best player this season was obviously their goalkeeper, which was Crocombe. I thought he was quite a shrewd signing. Speaking of shrews, Shrewsbury Town.
Very nice.
Finishing in 19th place. I'm going to take this one first because we all know I have a very weird hatred of Shrewsbury Town for no reason. I've given them an E. 19th place. I don't think their squad is the strongest, but they've stayed up on a bit of a whimper. No win in their last 5. League's lowest scorers. Paul Hurst does have his work, I think, cut out this summer. They look like they're going to be signing George Lloyd from Cheltenham, who didn't really pull up many trees last season. So I think it's going to be a difficult job for him next year. So, but based on this season, I think an E for Shrewsbury Town.
Yeah, I'm going to go one worse and go F. I just think, like I said, the squad isn't great, and ultimately they have survived, but they have just been poor. And similar to what you said about Burton, I think Shrewsbury are just looking at there's 5 worst teams in them because they could have been in real trouble, and they might be in a little bit of trouble over the summer as well. Bowman and Elliot Bennett, 2 of the strikers leaving out of contract, so they might be in a little bit of trouble. They probably have got their work out over across the summer. But in terms of the season just gone, they were sort of lucky that the teams below them weren't winning. So they were consistently above that relegation zone, but without any real fear that they were going to drop down.
I think I'd go with an E. I think they kind of did what they need to do. It's not a season that will go down in history other than being unremarkable for Shrewsbury. They survived, keeps the money flowing into the club, obviously, with League One being a higher level than League Two. Who'd have fucking guessed? So, do you know what I mean? It keeps them afloat, and that's really all I think a team like Shrewsbury can really want from this season.
Yeah, I gave them an E. I think I had a look back at sort of like previous season. They finished 12th last season, so it's a really big drop off. And that was that 12th finish. That's the highest they've finished in the last 6 seasons in League One. So there's just no progression at all. They're a bottom, like a lower mid-table, bottom mid-table League One side, and there's no progression in terms of them looking up, and they are only looking over the shoulders. And I mean, you mentioned, Sam, with the terms of the goals. If they do that next season, then they're in real trouble again of maybe slipping a little bit further down the table. Yeah, so I went for an E on Shrewsbury.
It was difficult. They started the season really weirdly, didn't they? Because they sacked Steve Cottrell for a style of play, brought in Matt Taylor, didn't really work, and then brought Paul Hurst back after he was sacked by Grimsby. So swings and roundabouts. The next is a team that have been fighting relegation, I suppose, for the last 2 years and survived both times on the final day. Cambridge United finished in 18th place. Seb, we'll start with you for Cambridge.
Yeah, well, you say final day again. I think that had been really hard done by how they got relegated this time around on that last day, because as well as the 14 Shrewsbury and Burton below them. So this year they've obviously come back from last season in terms of using that experience to go one better and a couple of places better, I think, as well. How they survived a couple of years ago was miraculous. But this season they've done really well. Bennett at the back, Digby midfield have all sort of impressed. Although having impressed, they've not necessarily ripped up trees or anything. But ultimately, their goal is to survive League One. That's exactly what they've done. I'm going to push out the boat and say C.
Ooh. I went for a D on Cambridge. I said like they need a bit of a refresh. I mean, it's quite an old team. And they've got that. I mean, as good as that is in terms of experience, I think they do need a bit more youth. And I think Gary Monk could probably look to do that. He seems to be shipping off a few of the older players in the team. And yeah, I described it as just a bit of a nothing season. The same thing I said about Shrewsbury, just no progression. They've just sort of stagnated. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what a job Gary Monk can do with them next season. But the fact that they've stayed in the league is probably a success. But overall, I've given them a D. I don't think I can say it's been a successful season, but they have stayed up, and that's the main thing.
So they're a team that survive on beating the teams around them. Of the 6 teams that finish below them, they only lost 3 games out of the 12. 2 of which were against Cheltenham. The other one was against Burton. So they got the job done, I think. They're one of those similar to Shrewsbury. They're very unsexy a lot of the time. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you want a sexy football team, and Cambridge just aren't that. Really.
So
I was going to suggest a swear jar during this podcast, but I might suggest a weird metaphor jar instead now.
Yeah,
they're not. Do you know what I mean? Like they're not. I'll finish that sentence there.
Callum was bankrupt by the end of this show. So I've given them a D as well, and just Cambridge actually had the second oldest average age of a squad in the league. So obviously they've released. Derby County
Okay.
by
Which is very
0.1.
un-Derby County, by the way, isn't it? Could we put Derby in, like, at least in the local area, growing up around there, they're known for their youth system. How the fuck they've ended up with the oldest team is...
Yeah, they've got rid of quite a few of those this time, haven't they?
Yeah. Oh, well.
So we might get our first. We've had one pass so far with a C. I reckon we might get a few more here. Reading finishing in 17th place. Obviously, a really turbulent season off the pitch. Finishing 17th with 53 points. Jamie.
I had a bit of trouble over this one because I was like, I had to convince myself not to give them an A because I thought that was maybe a bit too generous. Because obviously they've done very well just to survive in general with all the problems they've had off the pitch. But I thought that was a bit too optimistic. So I went for a B in the end. I think they've just done a really good job to stay in the league because I think there was a real concern that they would just drop with all the financial issues and having to sell players and everything like that. And I think they're a really hard team to beat on their day, especially at home. So yeah, I think that there's optimism for next season if they can sort out the off the field issues and maybe climb the table a little bit. But I think that they've, all things considered, they've done a good job just to stay in the division and stay stable.
They're a very variable team, aren't they? They I mean, obviously towards the end of the season they kind of got more of a bit of run of form going, didn't they? Toward the start of the season they were really struggling, but it almost seems weirdly that the playing squad kind of adapted to all the off-field shit that was happening. They kind of got used to it as the season went on and drowned it out, didn't they? So very, they didn't really have. You couldn't really point out what their survival approach was because their record against the teams above and below them is very meh, and the only teams they did the double over this season were Stevenage and Carlisle, I think. So very variable in what their survival approach was. They didn't go for just beating the teams below them. So it very weird season for Reading, really. But let's just hope they're off the field stuff sorts itself out before. You don't, like, with the greatest of respects, you don't want them in a promotion battle next year with shit owners because then all their next season is going to be even worse. So
yeah, I would I think full credit to Reading. I'd give them a C. I think finishing, I think it's 9 places above the relegation zone. Considering what they went through at the start of the season, you got to hand it to the massive respect to Ruben Sellers and the team. I think Femi Aziz has been their star player. They are going to miss him massively next season, but ultimately he's probably helped carry the side throughout the season. So I'd go see. I guess at the start of the season, when all the troubles were happening off the field, their aim would have been to survive, and they did that pretty comfortably in the end.
I'll say I didn't give my grade, did I? I'll go for a C. Sorry, I completely skipped that bit.
I've gone for a B for Reading.
There you go.
I think they've obviously got some really top players for League One. I haven't given them an age purely because I think with some of the players they probably should have finished a little bit higher. Like you've got Aziz, you've got Smith, you've got Nibbs, you've got Wing, you had Holmes, you had McIntyre. So you still had the basis of a very good team. It was just trying to, because they're still a young team, trying to get them to disregard sort of the off the field issues to do the performances on the pitch. And in the end, Sellers tweaked a few things. He ditched his 4-2-2 or whatever system he used, whatever system they call it nowadays. Made them a bit more resolute. They still scored 68 goals, so they don't have a problem scoring. It's just keeping them out, and I think that is part down to experience. So they sort the off the field issues out. Well done, Reading Football Club, I think. 16th place, Charlton Athletic. Now, I found this one quite tricky to grade. Because there was a point where I think a lot of us were looking at them thinking they could actually go down. I've given them an E. I think a club like Charlton cannot be finishing in 16th place with the budget they've got, the players they have. They just can't be finishing in 16th place. What I'm wondering is if Charlie Medvin, one of their owners, decided to make a documentary like he did with Sunderland again, because that would be quite interesting on the old Netflix.
Can we point out how boring their season has been in terms of results? 20 draws. Like, what's the record for draws in a League One season? Because that's like 20 draws in a season, like nearly half your games being like literally having barely any point to them is
Lincoln
quite
also got
weird.
20 draws last season.
Well, that's because Lincoln were pointless last season. And they had Mark Kennedy as their manager. So, just 20 draws just seems like really, really boring to watch. So, like, just really, really boring. Other than, like, what was it? But then you look at their run of games in the final bits of the season. What was the only game they lost in, like, the last, I don't know off the top of my head, but like the only game they lost in since the 10th of February was the final day of the season. Like, you look ever since February, okay, a shit ton of them are draws as well, but they didn't do too bad. So I go with a D, like a D. There's signs of improvement, but not good enough.
I think it's really interesting how Charlton and Reading both finished on the same points in 16th and 17th, but their seasons are both viewed slightly differently, despite sort of the final place. And there's only one goal in it in terms of goal difference. Reading, sort of, we were all praising it, and rightly so. But Charlton have been really disappointed this season. You're bringing in Alfie May over the summer. I think that everyone thought they had high hopes. The other attacking options that they've got up top. And to finish 16th is a real disappointment, I think, really. I'm going to stick it out there. I'm tossing it up. I think I'm going to go D in the end for Charlton. I think they should have been pushing much higher. In a poor League One season, the opportunity was there and they just didn't take it. And the 16th is a really poor finish for the Addicts.
So what? We had 2 Ds and an E so far, am I right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I've gone for a C for Charlton.
What are you smoking?
Why?
I thought I've gone a bit out there. I thought I'd spice things up a bit. I think they've been quite hardly done by here because
How?
Stick with me. Obviously, they've got a worse rating than Reading because of the off-field issues. They have had their own off-field issues, but not to the extent that Reading have, obviously. Alfie May's goals, they should have finished higher than they have. He's 23 goals this season, which should have put them higher than they did finish. But I think maybe I've been so nice. I think Seb's going to know what I'm going to say next. If anyone listened to our Monday night show knows exactly what's coming next, that Nathan Jones has done a cracking job with that team since February. And I think I would... right there, Callum. For audio listeners, Callum's just sort of rocked back in his chair, exasperated. But I think I would have gone for a D or an E. But their end to the season, I think, is really optimistic for them. And I think that'll sort of come when we talk a little bit later, when we talk about like looking towards next season. But I think they've been really sort of interesting and how well they've done this back end of the season and been really hard to beat. And I think that's why I've been as kind to them as I have, because they were flirting with relegation for a while, and they've turned that around and they've come out okay in the end. And if they perform second half of the season all the way through next season, then they're going to be knocking on the door at the right end of the table. So I think on reflection, a solid season, hence the C.
Okay. There's always one generous one out of us, though, isn't there?
High as a kite. High as a kite.
We'll obviously get on to Charlton, I think, for next season a bit later on. So we got in 15th place, I think we're getting to the part of the table where the grades are probably going to be quite easy to do, is Bristol Rovers. We'll start with Callum for Bristol Rovers.
C, just a C. They're boring. They did what they had to do. Yeah. Move on. I don't really have much to say about Bristol Rovers. They're just a bit... You don't get excited to play them, do you? So,
not now they got rid of Jay Barton.
Exactly. That was the only interesting thing about them, was that you were guaranteed to have something fun to write about post-match, but they don't. So, C, move on. We'll be here all night.
Similar thought. I went for D in the end. Chris Martin's been quite good for them, hasn't he? But that was my only real pick. They should have finished higher than they have. Like they'd hoped to finish higher. So yeah, I've gone for D.
I've also gone for D. Pretty easy on this one. Just a pretty basic season really for Bristol Rovers under Matt Taylor in the end. Martin impressed. Luke Thomas on the wing as well. Evans are also starring, and yeah, some players not starring, but those three probably the ones standing out. But yeah, league table's probably about right.
Yeah, I've also gone for a D. I think if they finished in the top 12, it'd have been a C. But basically, because they're bottom half, I've given them a D. Nothing really more to say on Bristol Rovers, to be honest.
Short and sweet.
Yeah. 14th place, Northampton Town. Now, this one I found quite tricky. Obviously, being newly promoted, they had a whole host, I think, of injuries this season. Obviously, Sam Hoskins being injured for most of the season hasn't helped. So I've actually given Northampton a C. I think they've had a really, really solid C. I could have even pushed it to a B, being in 14th place. But I've gone for a C. I think if they keep, obviously they're going to lose Mark Leonard next season, which is going to be a big miss. But the job John Brady's done this season is extremely, extremely good. And Northampton should be relatively happy with what they've done this season.
Yeah, I think the way you were setting yourself up, you're going higher than a C there. Because I've gone for a C. I've just gone for just a very solid season. First season in the division, mid-table, can't complain. Mark Leonard's fantastic. I mean, he's really incredible. So yeah, C.
I'll go with a C as well, but their end of season form is not one to be hugely optimistic about. Really, few disappointing results there. Obviously, Burton being the main one, they should have really won. I feel like Northampton are one of them that they have to be careful about next season. They're one of them that this season kind of just petered out a little bit. So they're one of them that they're in danger of, I don't want to say second season syndrome because they didn't exactly have a stellar season this year, but you kind of hope that they can kick on and become a solid mid-table team next year, and it's all about that kind of progress. Sorry, so we'll have to wait and see, I think.
I echo. I don't know what to say. Echo sort of the sentiments have already been said. Like you said, sort of Sam, that in the mid-table, similar sort of opinions about the team. Yeah, just a solid season. First year in League One, 14th finish. I think is perfect for them. So I'm going to go with a C.
4 C's for Northampton Town. Next, in 13th place, Exeter City. So Jamie, we'll start with.
I've gone for another C, and I feel like maybe slightly generous. They finished 14th last season, 13th this season, so that's one place higher, isn't that? So that's I think that's the only reason I gave them a C, not a D, in terms of they're going in the right direction, if be it very slowly, and it's just consolidation. I think is the way I'd describe it. Their season's just another mid-table season, so a C for me.
I am going for a B, I think, for Exeter, because I think they've actually performed really well. 13th is a massive achievement for the Greshams. I think they've sort of gone under the radar this year a little bit in terms of the final finish and in terms of some of the performances that they've been putting in. They've taken advantage of it being a pretty weak league, and 13th spot is bang on. So yeah, I'm going to push it out and say a B.
I think I'll probably go with can we go with, are we doing C pluses? Can we go into that? I'll go with C plus purely because their base was quite strong. I mean, they only picked up 2 defeats against the bottom 6, I think. One against Fleetwood away and then Port Vale at home, where there were only 2 defeats against the bottom 6. So in terms of a team like Exeter, who probably don't really have ambitions that much of playoff chasing, realistically, you've got to think like they're not doing too bad. So they've got a solid base, which for a team like Exeter is vital to keep that cash flow coming in, keeping at this level. So they did the job. So C+, they passed the test.
I've gone with I've gone with Seb. I've gone it for a B for Exeter. I think if we were talking 4 months ago, we'd have probably given them an E, where they were heading as well. They were also falling down the table a bit like Charlton. But the turnaround Gary Caldwell's done, especially after the start of the season they had, where they're unbeaten in their first 10, I think it was, completely capitulated and have sort of got above that now. And having no Dimitri Mitchell for part of the season, is one of the best left wingers in the league. obviously was extremely difficult, and being a fan-owned club as well and still trying to make a profit out of that is extremely challenging. So I've gone for a B for Exeter. Right, so into the top half of the table, and the second team to have a points deduction this season, Wigan Athletic finishing in 12th with 62 points. Seb, we'll start with you on Wigan.
Yeah, well, of course, Wigan started with a -8 point deduction at the start of the season, finishing in that top half under Sean Maloney. I'm going to go with a B. I think the fact that they've come back from that block of having that point deduction, a couple of the results haven't gone in their favour, but if you look at the season as a whole, they've done really well to keep a lot of the star players still. I think they've done phenomenal, and to finish top half over the after the summer they've been through, I think 12th is very much applaudable, and I think a B is very much valid.
I'll probably also go with a B. The only thing that stopped it from almost being an A is the fact that they picked up a few sloppy draws against teams in the relegation zone. You think, take away that 8 points, that puts them on 70, and then if you give them, I don't know, like a win they got 2 draws against Cheltenham, so if you give them 1 win there, a win against Port Vale, and then a win against Carlisle, all of which were draws. If you give them 3 goals in those 3 specific matches, that puts them into the playoffs. Probably, sort of for argument's sake. So, and then we'd be talking AA star if a team like Wigan are making the playoffs. But they were just relatively inconsistent throughout the season. Is the only thing that holds them back from being any higher than a B. But they survived and got top half. So that's got to be looked at as a success.
Yeah, I feel like this is another one I've been a bit out there, like my Charlton one. I went for an A on Wigan. I think they've done a really fantastic job just to finish as high as they have. I mean, Callum mentioned it a little bit. If they take away the point deduction, they'd be 10th and only 6 points off the playoffs. And with such a young team, Maloney, it's his first job in English football, and he's done a great job with that team, I think. And it's been a really good season. Top half finish. I think if you just said at the start of the season that they'll get a top half finish with the point deductions and with the youth of the team, then I think you'd have said that's a success. So I think they've had a very good season. And if they carry on that sort of vein into next season, then, I mean, not sky's the limit, but they could be even higher up the table.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with a B. I was toying between a C and a B. But if you do take their points off, they would be 10th. And I think Wigan fans would probably bit your hand off to take 10th. They've obviously got some quality League One players in their team. Callum McManaman still floating around. Stephen Humphreys, who I think has been released this at the end of the season. You've got the geezer at centre half, Hughes, I think it is, who's one of the best centre halves in the league. So they do have some good players.
That Taylor Asgard's very good as well.
Yes, which is why I've not given them an A, but I think a B is fair. So 11th place was Leyton Orient. I'm going to let you 3 go first before I'm going to comment. So Callum, we'll go with you first for Leyton Orient.
Probably go with I feel like every team in this kind of bracket is a B. Like Leyton Orient are a team that at points were showing playoff potential. I think after New Year. It was New Year, and then obviously we had the Lincoln game and whatever. Like you really, really pushing it for the playoffs. I feel like kind of went a bit under the radar. Everyone was kind of slowly starting to shit their knickers about Lincoln City, and then just like Leyton Orient were just there, like hiding in the shadows. Is that another one for the swear jar?
Yeah, that's another one for the jar.
There you go. Shit their knickers. I think it went all right. Like there were a lot of signs of promise, but they didn't deliver on it completely in the end. But they delivered enough for it to be a successful. It's a really weird. They kind of like showed 70% of their potential, and that was good enough for a strong season. So I'll go for a B.
I wasn't expecting. I've gone for a C. In that it was just a mid-table season. It's just solid. A C is a pass. It's a very solid season, is how I looked at it. Because I think it could have been more because they've slipped off so much since like March, isn't it? Really, and that poor end to the season, I think, has knocked them back. Because if they're a couple of places higher, that little bit closer to the playoffs, then you think it's a superb season. But as it was, a very solid season and no complaints. But yeah, C from me.
I'm going to go with Callum and go for a B. I think, there was actually moments in the season where they were pushing for a playoff spot where Leighton Orient. I think Richie Wellens is a great manager to have. I think they've done really well under him so far this season. I think 11th is really respectable. Just over 10 points off the top 6, so not actually that far in 11th place. I think it's been a good season. And I think B is about solid. A probably would have been an A had they reached the playoffs or just outside because of that dip off. I think they deserve a B.
Yeah, I went for a B.
An A star then, so no.
No, I went for a B. I think the amount of injuries we had, especially the start of the season we had where we didn't win our first, I think it was our first 4. We then petered and had a really good middle. Then we didn't win for 10. Then we obviously escalated and got relatively close to the playoffs, but injuries, I think, just caught up with the squad. And did we leave 12 points on the table to sneak into 6th? I think we did. There was games throughout the season that we didn't win that we I believe we should have won. But I think a solid season and hopefully something to build in a very competitive league next year. So 10th place, probably quite a mixed season. Wycombe Wanderers, obviously recently being taken over by some multi-billionaire from Kazakhstan, I think it is. So, Jamie, we'll start with you on Wycombe Wanderers' 10th place finish.
I mean, I've not really got a lot to say for it. Mid-table, isn't it? They finished 9th last season, 6th the season before, so they're going in the wrong direction in turn, wherever that's concerned. I think they're one of the teams that should be looking to knock on the door of the playoffs, but I think there's about, 10 teams that are looking to get in the 4 spots, really, aren't there? So, yeah, it's a mid-table season, a C, just a fine. It's not good, it's not bad, so a C.
I'm going to go C as well. I think it's a pretty solid finish. Wycombe didn't quite have enough quality to really push for the playoff spots, but ultimately finished in the top half of the season. C is about right.
Just again, inconsistency, and that's kind of what you tend to get at this point of the season. At the end of the season, they were one of the teams to beat, weren't they? Kind of towards the end, so just annoying, isn't it, for Wycombe fans? Obviously, you say they're going in the wrong direction, but they're also a bit. You look at they're going in the wrong direction, but they're also quite consistent. They are normally a top half League One side, and that's kind of what you expect of them, and that's what they gave us this season. So, in terms of Wycombe, I'll probably go C. They just did what they normally do.
Yeah, I would also go with a C. I think they also got to the Bristol Street Mofers, whatever trophy it's called nowadays, final as well before losing to Peterborough. A transition in style of play. But there was calls for Bloomfield to be sacked earlier in the season. I know when we played them around Christmas time, there was calls for him to go, but he's turned the ship around, 10th place, and obviously they're going to be rather excited going into next season. But I think for a club like Wycombe, who have obviously recently been in the Championship, I think a C is probably fair.
Mm-hmm.
Into 9th place, I'm not going to start with Callum on this one because their manager is a source for all of our conversations. It's Stevenage. And Seb, we'll start with you for Stevenage.
This is a tricky one because I think had finished similar to Wycombe, either in the top 6 or very close to the top 6, I think our ranking would have been higher. Overall, it's been a positive season for Stevenage, don't get me wrong, but having been in the position that they were in and now in the position that they finished in, you've got to look at that and as a bit of a disappointment, really. Yes, it was the first season in League One after promotion from League Two. Yes, obviously we had Steve Evans go for the last couple of games as well. But ultimately, they had a solid spot in that playoff race, and they just fell out of it. So I'm going to go with a C. I think they've done really well. I just think, they evidently didn't have enough quality, and based on the final league position, based on the fact that they were in a good position and ultimately didn't finish in that good position, I think C.
Yeah, I mean, I went for a B actually, but I think similar thoughts really in terms of it's a good result for a first season and how close they did get to the playoffs, and the fact they're in there for so long, and it is really just a couple of results going one way rather than the other that's cost them. And I guess the other reason I've sort of bumped them up to a B rather than a C is that the style of play they had under Steve Evans is obviously very different to really anything else in the division, and they've sort of proved a lot of people wrong with that. I mean, take it or leave it in terms of you enjoy watching it, but they've proved people wrong in terms of doing it a different way to a lot of the teams in the division and all the teams above them really. So yeah, I went for a B in the end. I think it's a better than average, but obviously not an A if they'd have got into the playoffs, isn't it? Really, but yeah, I went for a B.
On reflection, thank God he's gone. But then also, fuck, he's back. Yeah, like Rotherham, fuck's sake, man. They're just not like no one. Like I feel like he's ruined their reputation now. Like even next season, he's not associated with that club anymore. But I just don't want to play Stevenage anymore because I now don't like the club just because of that one man. Even though he's not associated with them anymore, I just But the thing is that like even though you might not like Steve Evans, and like is something that not many people do for Steve Evans, you have got to appreciate that it was a somewhat good season, as much as it pains me to say it. And Sam will know that it pains me to say that Stevenage have done well. I hate saying they've done well, but yeah, like, they're a B. Like they knew what they were doing approaching this season. They've figured out a way to piss people off into giving them points, and it worked. And they would nearly play off. So we'll give them a B.
Oh, I feel like I've been really generous here. I've actually given them an A.
What?
Finishing in ninth. Yeah. So they're the highest ranked of the promoted teams. First of all,
Yeah.
But we can say their budget's probably near the I'd say bottom 6 budget. They obviously had the football was bloody boring, but it gave them an identity. They were a big second ball team, and it was so effective for the first 3 quarters of the season. Then the Steve Evans rumours, obviously the Rotherham situation was happening. I think in the background, and then obviously performances started to dwindle because of that. They had to be on it, and Steve Evans had to be on it all the time. And I think for the size of Stevenage Football Club, finishing 9th should be a huge achievement. So, as it pains me to say, I gave them an A.
No, I do get that. I just think that the drop off in such a short space of time was a big thing for me. But you have got to applaud them, really. For the first season, yeah, I get that.
Can we stop being nice to Stevenage now? Can we go back to
We're going to move on from Stevenage very quickly. We've now got to move on to Blackpool. So we'll start, Jamie. You can start us off with Blackpool.
I was hoping I wasn't going to have to start on Blackpool because I think this is another one that's going to be a bit out there. I've gone for a D for Blackpool because I feel like not getting the playoffs is a failure because obviously coming down, they're the only team that came down who don't have a financial issue sort of waning over them. And they had a team good enough to get in the top 6 and they just didn't. So for me, that's why I've gone for a D. I don't think it's bad enough to drop them any further down than that, but a C, a pass, I don't think that they've reached because they've not achieved playoffs at the end of the season. So yeah, that is my reasoning behind what might look like a harsh D on paper, but I think with that explanation, maybe it makes a bit more sense.
It's a really weird season on paper, isn't it, for them? Like, I like they were always. I mean, obviously, I'm sure they were in the playoffs, but I can't remember the last time they were actually in that top 6. They always seemed to either be 7th, 8th, maybe 9th. Like, always were lurking outside it. For like, I can always see the playoffs being what Peterborough, Bolton, Oxford, and Barnsley or Stevenage. Like, I cannot remember seeing Blackpool actually in that top 6 for much of the season. So I don't want to agree with Jamie because I don't like agreeing with anyone, but I'll probably. Do you know what? For the sake of being different, I'll go C-.
Oh,
Just
dear, here we
because
go.
I can't agree with him. But do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't.
Can you not agree with
great.
me because I'm right? Is that the problem?
Seb, what do you think about Blackpool season?
Ooh, nice diversion there, Callum. Nice diversion. Well,
Go
funnily
on,
enough,
Seb. You know you want to.
I would also go C as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a bleak hope that they could actually push into the playoff spot in the last couple of weeks, but because of probably we'll get into them in a minute, because of Lincoln's momentum that they missed out. I think 8th place is still a solid finish. Really, they had a little bit of change of last summer coming down from the championship. They were the highest finisher of all the teams that did come down, so we have to applaud them in that. But ultimately they wanted to reach playoff and they haven't done so. They've only finished 3 points off it, which is pretty good. C is about right.
I've joined with Jamie. I've given them a D. I think with the squad of their quality, all they had to do on the final day was actually win after all the results, and they would have got into the playoffs by a goal. And obviously they didn't. And to me, that is they bottled the playoffs. And I think with the front line they had, the midfield they had, they should have got top 6 personally. If I could give like a C minus, I would, but that's why I've given them a D. 7th place, Lincoln City. Now,
well, if only we had a couple of Lincoln City experts here.
I know.
We'll give it to the Lincoln fan first.
Do I cover up the badge here? Yeah, good. I think it's remarkable, isn't it? Remarkable second half of the season. Obviously, ever since New Year's Day, and they're like obviously tailed off at the end of 3 defeats in 2024 or something like that so far. Wait, just the stat, like the momentum that Lincoln had in that final bit of the season is incredible. So it probably wasn't enough in the end. They lost. I think the kind of feeling was that they lost playoffs under Kennedy and that era under Shaw. But at the end of the day, I think if they hadn't have taken that time over the Skabala decision, which is in essence what took them so long to get a manager in, we would have ended up probably with someone like Des Buckingham, and obviously we'll get on to Oxford and their promotion. But I think if Des Buckingham was at Lincoln, we'd be talking about a completely different season. Lincoln would be nowhere near the position they are under Buckingham. Skabala was the right choice. So it's an interesting decision. But when you look at the results table, which Sam, you'll be glad to know that soccerstats.com has made a return to this podcast. Please sponsor us. Lincoln they've only lost 5 games to the teams below them, but they've only won 2 games against the teams above them. Like, that sort of difference in performance is insane. Like, you shouldn't be doing, like, if you want to get playoffs, you need to be beating the teams above you as stupid. I mean, it makes obvious sense, doesn't it? But as a whole, I'd have to give Lincoln's season an A. That's not even, I don't think that's hugely biased. I think that they have to have an A, especially if we're doing it on recency bias as well.
Yeah, I went for B in the end, just being that I sort of think back to the start of the season, and I probably thought this is where they were going to finish. Obviously,
Really?
Just outside the playoffs. So I was a big Mark Kennedy fan.
You thought a Mark Kennedy team would get anywhere near the playoffs?
Really?
Well, they weren't doing too badly when they sacked him, did they? Well, dismissed him, I should say. But they, I mean, I thought like I seem to be the only person left who's still on the Mark Kennedy train. But in terms of just on the actual season, it is if they drew to Reading and lost to Wigan a couple of weeks at the start of April, if they'd have won one of those games, they would have been in the playoffs. So I feel like it's very fine. I think that's why it may be a little bit harsh to give them a B and not an A. But it's so close, so fine margin, just one game. But since Christmas, they've been unbelievable. 16 games it was unbeaten, wasn't it, before they lost to Wigan? Something like 1 loss in 20 it was before the final game of the season. And they were just 1 win away. So it's been a very good season, all things considered. especially after that long period they had over Christmas where they were really poor. After Scrabala came in, they just took a while to get going. But once they did, they were superb. Probably the best team in the division since Christmas, like with them and Portsmouth. So they've done really well. And if they can carry on that momentum into next season, obviously keeping the players, bringing a couple in sort of thing, then who knows where they could finish. But I went for a B in the end, just missing out on an A for finishing the playoffs.
That's fair. I'd probably give him a B rather than A as well. I think similar to what Jamie said, the season overall, I don't think anyone, although what Jamie says that, but I don't think anyone could have predicted how it would have ended up. But I think ultimately that having had the momentum, having been on that run streak, to just fall short of that last hurdle will be bitterly disappointing. So hence why they just get a B and not an A.
I will put it out there just to sort of prove my point. I put a 5 on Lincoln and Donny to both finish in the playoffs at the start of the season. So didn't really plan that part. But
Gutting.
I know, yeah. So
it's a tricky one for Lincoln because I'm stuck between the B and the A on this one. I'm going to give them an A just purely because of how that end of season run. The signing of Joe Taylor completely changed their season. The appointment of Scrabala ultimately changed the course of their season. And when I went to Lincoln, the food market behind their stadium was absolutely unreal. So they get a little bonus point for the little food market. Not the weather, because that was garbage. That was terrible. It was terrible.
I remember I met you, didn't I? Just not to dilute too far. But I was walking for about 15 minutes, and it was hailstones at me. Like I was a different colour on the front than I was at the back. My clothes were changed colour. I remember being very dishevelled. I was just shivering all game because I was just soaked.
I'll point out, I was in a hot, warm radio studio, wasn't I? For that game. So, I love that one.
Based on your little food market and your little fan club behind the stand, I'm gonna give you an A. I'm gonna be nice.
Thank you.
6th place, Seb, Barnsley.
Oxford. Barnsley. I've got the table wrong. You're right.
Yeah. Well, it's been interesting, yeah. I'm not really sure where to go, really, because you can look at it from two sides. You can look at it. Yes, we finished 6th in the playoff. Yes, we had a big change over the summer. Losing in the last minute at Wembley, that's going to hurt a lot of the players. I know it certainly hurt a lot of the fans. They're coming back from that, finishing 6th. It's a good return, for any other side of League One. But the style of football and some of the results under Neil Collins were just absolutely awful. We got away with it this year, I think. We got away with it. Had it not been a really poor league in terms of the strength of teams, not that many teams were that strong this season, we would have been towards the bottom half of the table, definitely. We got away with it. We got a few lucky results, but we had a few bad. We had loads of bad performances. We got away with some stuff. So I'm a bit torn, really. It wasn't an A star season, but it wasn't a U because ultimately we've had some form of success by finishing in the playoffs. I'd probably go midway. I'd probably say C. It's not been the most exciting season in terms of the style of football we've played. Some of the results that, I said we didn't get in the end. Some of the results that we end up finished, battered by Lincoln, lost at home to Cambridge. They just sort of came from nowhere, really. Having had automatic promotion in our grasps in March to then just slip away so quickly and to only just squeeze in that 6th place come the last day of the season. So I'm going to go C.
Yeah. I've always said the atmosphere around Barnsley confuses me. Sorry, Jamie. It always confuses me, doesn't it? Like I said this to Sam. Like you're in the playoffs. Like you were like 4th, 5th. Like you good team, good momentum. Like a lot of teams would be happy with that. But I mean, obviously, the main thing I had was that Lincoln defeat that you had. But just the atmosphere around that club, I get that it was a 5-0 drubbing, but even when you went 1 or 2-0 down, none of you, I mean, obviously, I'm sure there was some, but just the atmosphere just seemed really, really weird. And it worries me for next year. So I'll probably have to go with a C, maybe even a D. Like,
Yeah. No, I'm sort of going to piggyback on that. I went for a C, and I guess for similar reasons both of you have said, in that they were so close to automatic promotion at even like 2 months ago. Is that since that draw to Bolton, where they were 2-0 up and conceded 2 goals last 5-10 minutes of the game, they've not done anything really. They fell off massively. So yeah, it's a C for me. In that, I mean, as I showed, as I got them the wrong end of the table, I forgot they finished 6th. That's how bad they fell off. That they ended up finishing 6th. But overall, you got to look at it as an overall season, and they finished in the playoffs. So a C. But you look these last couple of months, and it's easily an E or an F, isn't it?
Yeah, I ended up giving them a C as well. They ended up not being the biggest overperformance by expected points in the end. They were for like 3/4 of the season, but they ended up just being 12. They had 12 more points than they should have. The most as going off expected points, Portsmouth are actually the biggest overachievers in the end, which is quite surprising. Whether you believe metrics or not, but that's what it says on my screen, so that is what we're going with. 5th place, the playoff winners, Oxford United. I've given them an A purely because
they won the playoffs.
They won the playoffs, and I think based on the performance in the playoff final, it's probably their best performance under Buckingham. To be honest, he got it tactically absolutely spot on. Yeah. There was obviously a difficulty transitional period when Manning left, wasn't there? Where we all thought, oh, right, here we go. They're going to slip down the table and be mid-table. But he's turned it around in the final 10 games where they only lost 1 game. I found the funniest thing about Oxford's season is they only beat Peterborough in the top 9 until the playoff final. And then they went and beat Bolton, who arguably had their worst performance, I suppose, of the season. So I think an A for Oxford United.
Yeah, I mean, I went an A as well. I think because you kind of have to, don't you? The fact that they've gone up, I mean, it is a success. Just you have to give them an A. Under Buckingham, when he came in, they didn't win back-to-back games until April, and they won 4-0, 4-0, and then beat Peterborough 5-0. So they really turned it on when they needed to at the back end of the season. And that run-in, they did exactly what they needed to do, barring that loss to Lincoln, but obviously still enough in the end. And yeah, like you mentioned, that performance in the playoff final, they were absolutely superb. I don't know if anyone had them going up out of the playoffs, and they did so well against Bolton. They played them off the park, really. So it has to be a success, and overall a cracking season, getting promoted. So
yeah, I agree. I went with an A. And just picking up what you said, they were my least expected to go and win the playoffs out of the 4. I didn't necessarily back Barnsley, but I never thought that Oxford could go on and win it, really. So credit to them and credit to them for that final result and getting a 1 over Bolton, who unfortunately we have to play. I just want them to go up. But anyway, Oxford, credit to them. I'd probably give... I'm sick of Bolton. Oxford probably an A. Because of that one performance, because of the way that they started the season really well. Let's not forget under Manning. Yes, as Sam said, there was a little bit of a sort of a transition period, but in the end, Oxford started the season well, and they actually finished the season quite well. So they get an A from me.
First of all, I look forward to seeing you back for the 25-26 season. You ain't got a hope in hell in the championship, so enjoy that. I don't know. Like, obviously, they started the season well. They finished the season, yeah. But just, like, how the fuck did they nearly bottle it that much? Like they were nearly the Molotov cocktails of bottle jobs. Like, just absolute...
That's one for the metaphor, Jar.
There we go. I kind of want to give them a B+ purely just to shit on them, because I really like their fans are the most annoying thing, especially being from Lincoln. They're just like, oh, look at us, we got the playoffs. And I'm just, shut up. But I'll probably go with an A just to shut their fans up for a bit.
The only thing you can say, come back as Oxford fans, saying is at least you've got 4 stands. Moving on to 4th place, Peterborough United, league's highest scorers. Jamie, Peterborough United.
I thought this was quite difficult, this one, because obviously playoffs, I don't think is a terrible result for them. In the end, I went for a B, mainly I think because of the rebuild they've had this season, because obviously they shipped quite a few off after the nightmare at Hillsborough last season for them. So I've sort of summed it up as a solid season for a very young team, a very pacey team, and one that just scores goals for fun. Really, it's the Darren Ferguson trademark, I guess. And then they went and bottled it against Oxford in the playoffs. So that's why it's a B and not an A. Really, that by the end of the season, that it's all gone wrong. But I think still a decent season in terms of progression. But next season, I think they're in a bit of trouble. Really, losing Mason Clark, losing Johnson Clark Harris. I don't know really what's in store for them next season. But yeah, a B for the season gone.
I'd chip in and say B as well. I think to do so well as they did without Johnson Clark Harris having been a main staple in their team, I think is really impressive. I think the fact that they've got this sort of new system and identity of bringing a few more youngsters through. We've seen that with Edwards. You know, he sort of shone this season for Peterborough. Poku and Mason Clark on the wing either side have been really impressive. But ultimately just couldn't get the job done in the playoffs. But they deserve to finish in the playoffs, definitely. So credit to them, and I agree with you on a B. It would have been an A had they got to Wembley, but a B for what's been a solid season.
I mean, out of the top 13, only Barnsley conceded more goals, which probably says everything you need to know about both Barnsley and Peterborough this year. I just they're just... Yeah, they feel like the team that should be, like, if there weren't 3 stronger teams in Bolton, Derby and Portsmouth. I mean, it's obvious to say that Peterborough would have got relegated. I feel like they're a bit unlucky that Portsmouth
got relegated. Wow.
Sorry, would have got promoted.
Wow.
Sorry, but
Bit harsh.
you never know.
There's always next season.
Yeah, you never know. I just feel like they got unlucky that Portsmouth decided to not bottle it this year. I feel like they were that was like, as stupid as it sounds, like they're a good team, but their defense clearly, like their style of play clearly just lends itself to scoring goals and conceding a similar amount as well. So that's kind of what's cost them in the end, is just that inconsistency as well. Didn't they go on runs? I can't remember off the top of my head, where they'd win like 5-0, 5-0, 5-0, 6-0, and then just lose like 3-0, 2-0, 1-0 or something like that. And you're just like, where has this come from? So again, inconsistency really. And it leads me to give them a B.
They did win the Johnston Paint, EF, whatever it's called, the Bristol Street Motors. I think that is worth mentioning.
Yeah,
this is a League One podcast. A League One podcast.
You want to start the Bristol Street Motors podcast? You're welcome to go to that.
No one wants that.
Coming
for
soon.
Me, it was toying between. It's in that middle of the B and the A for me, just purely because they obviously won a trophy.
The League One podcast.
I have gone for a B, just purely because they did. If they got to Wembley, I'd have given them an A. Same reasons for Seb. I think a B, especially after the comeback of what happened last season. I think a B is fair. Their style of play is extremely entertaining. I like the way that McAntony does his business. He gets players from non-league and lower leagues, brings them up, develops them, and sells them on. They've got a really good model and a really successful way of actually doing it. So I think a B is fair.
Yep.
Moving on to Bolton Wanderers, who finished 3rd. I think this one will be quite interesting. Seb is not shaking his head, so we're going to Seb first.
I just wanted them to go up. I'm just sick of playing them. But you can't deny that they are a good team. They ultimately just got done in the play final by a masterclass from Oxford and Des Buckingham. But yeah, I think they just drew too many games in the end, Bolton. The January business was really shrewd, bringing in Collins up top. I think that was really clever business. Having Adebayo and Jerome to come off the bench as two physical strikers. And then, of course, what's he called? The main guy.
Charles.
Dion Charles as well. So having Charles and Collins as your front two, I think, credit to them. And then Jerome and Adebayo as two different options to come off up top. I think Baxter's been really impressive in goal. Of course, Santos, the centre-half. I think they've played really well this season. But similar to what we just said about Peterborough, I'm going to give them a B.
Well, they only lost 3 games at home all season. Like, they only lost to Wigan, which is understandable, but, well, not really understandable because they lost 4-0. Then they lost at home to Bristol Rovers, who, of course, they beat 2-0 away. But the one result that really, really cost them is Carlisle. Like, how do you lose 3-1 at home to Carlisle? But you're then thinking, if you win those 3 games, you go up in second. Obviously, of course, going unbeaten at home throughout a whole season is really bloody difficult. Don't get me wrong. But there were 3 home games away from... There were 3 home wins away from promotion, away from automatic promotion. And that's kind of what's cost them in the end, is those 3 off days against Wigan, Bristol and Carlisle. So I'll go with a B+. They just couldn't quite get the job done. I don't think they couldn't quite reach the top marks.
Go on, Sam.
I was really going to be harsh and give them a C, but I have gone with a B. I just think with the firepower they've got going forward, all 4 of their strikers getting to near enough any team in the league. I just wanted a bit more from Bolton. They didn't beat Shrewsbury at home. They obviously had that. They didn't beat Exeter away. There's just results throughout their season you can pick out that cost them. They lost to us away from home, and I really like some of the players Bolton have, but I know they got 87 points and had the best home record in the league, but I've always just wanted more from them. I will give them a B because I'm not going to be that harsh, and they did finish 3rd. But I was very, very close to giving them a C. There's just something about them where I don't feel. Yeah, I don't know what the word is, but there's just something missing from Bolton for me.
Well, I'm not going to chicken out, Sam, because I'll give them a C.
Brave man.
Because they failed at doing what they wanted to do at the start of the season. Obviously, their eyes are set on promotion. That they shouldn't be in League One, and they failed to get out of the division. So I did have them on a D for a little bit, and thought that was too harsh. So I did bump it up to a C. But yeah, they fell short of getting promoted. So I don't think it can be seen as a positive season, especially with that team. We've mentioned the attacking options they've got, and the fact that team's not got promoted and not won when they've needed to, and played really poorly in the playoff final, albeit against a team that set up perfectly in that game, that they didn't really have a look in the playoff final. And yeah, all in all, they've failed at what they wanted to do. So it's a C from me.
I think a very fair C as well.
Bottle Wanderers.
Bottle Wanderers. So 2nd place, we're into the top 2. Derby County. And we'll start with Callum for Derby.
You have to give them an A, don't you? They got, I mean, not an A star because there were still a few marks off the season. But there are a few what I'm going to call Derby days, and that's not playing teams close to them. That's just Derby County performances where they just did a Derby County, I think is probably fair to say. But they got automatic promotion. Obviously, we know there's still a lot going on around the club in terms of finances and stuff like that. You're looking at things like a 2-1 defeat at home to Charlton, a 1-0 defeat away at Reading, a 1-0 defeat away at Northampton and Shrewsbury as well. That's what's cost Derby the league title. I mean, obviously, Portsmouth have also had similar days, but the main difference is, isn't it? It's that 10 defeats that Derby had against the 5 that Portsmouth had, and it was Portsmouth's ability. I'm sure we'll get onto. It was Portsmouth's ability to just grind out a result, and that's what's really got them the title. So that's why Derby don't get an A star. But still a great season for the Rams, and they'll be back in the league that they probably belong in, the Championship.
Yeah, I'll agree with all of that. It's a very easy A, this one, isn't it? Obviously, they've got promoted, they've been superb, and they've been throughout the whole season the second best team in the league, really, and that's obviously where they finished. So, great season from a great set of players, a very, very good manager. So yeah, I don't think they could ask for too much more. Obviously, win the league, but that's my point. So.
Yeah, I would agree and go in here as well for Derby. I think they had a good baseline in terms of cash in at the back, midfielder, Bird and Howard and Collins up top, Backhausen and Mendes-Lang on the wing. They're all quality players, and they've all shown that this season, and deservedly go up for me. So it'd be an A for Derby County.
Yeah, I echo everything, and it's an A. Best defence in the league.
Best goal defence in the league, I forgot to mention.
Yeah, and doing what Paul Warne teams do, have a really strong second half of the season. They were sitting around 4th or 5th, weren't they, in the first half of the season? And you're thinking, oh, is this going to be the Derby we know where they just falter away? But no, Paul Warne teams do what Paul Warne teams do. Really strong second half of the season. Oldest average age of squads in the league as well. And finishing second place at A for Derby. And then I think we all know what Pompey are going to get. A star for me. I don't need to say reasons why. Losing 5 games, getting 97 points, you can't get anything less for winning a league title, I don't think.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Go on.
I echoed the words of Tina Turner in my notes and put simply the best for Portsmouth and give them an A star.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think I think a lot of us, maybe just me, but a lot of us are sort of waiting for them to blip off like they have done in recent years, but they didn't. They proved us all wrong. They just continued that trajectory, if I can get the words out, forward, and ultimately deserved to win the league and did so by some country miles. So yeah, A star for Portsmouth.
It's very impressive, isn't it, that they kind of didn't do it. I think it's one of the signings for me, and he's almost up there for. We'll get on to player of the season in a bit, but he was up there. Was Callum Lang? For me, he was one of the players that stopped them from having that little blip. That was what stopped them, and it's very shrewd. Obviously, fair play to them. I hate being positive towards Portsmouth because it's my brother's team, so I'm meant to hate them. But they did all right. We'll have to go with an A star, I suppose.
So A stars across the board for Portsmouth. So what we're going to do, we're going to have our really late ad break now, and then we'll come back for the remaining part of the podcast. Okay, welcome back. So we're going to move on to our player of the season for each of us. You can do, if you want, you can do 2 players of the season. You can do a player of the season from the whole league, and then the player of the season from the club you support. So who wants to go first? Any volunteers? No, everyone's
go on. I got one for a season. I could guess I'll come up with one for Lincoln. I'll let Callum do that first, though. But in terms of player of the season for me, I went for Nathaniel Mendes-Lang. 25 goal involvement, 16 assists, 9 goals, no penalties in that, and out wide to be having that sort of output and be so important to that team. The most big chances created in the league, joint with Harrison Burrows, which I'm assuming will get a mention. But he's got game-winning goals. He's not scoring a goal in a 4-0 win. He's scoring a goal in a 1-0 win or in a 2-1 win to win the game. And he's that sort of player that he'll turn it on when it's needed. And he's done it all the way through the season. I think he's been superb, really. So, yeah, he gets my pick. And he's rapid as well, which helps. But, yeah. Nathaniel Mendes-Lang for me.
Callum?
I'm gonna. He's an outside choice. He's obviously not the. I'm gonna stick with Callum Lang. I mean, obviously the name's kind of a bit of a thing, and he's, obviously he's definitely not the best on the pitch player. Like, don't get me wrong, he's not on Mendes-Lang in terms of sheer quality, but just what he helped Portsmouth achieve. Like, I'm a really big believer in that if it wasn't for his signing and some of the goals that he came up with, I really think Portsmouth would have slipped into that January, February slump that we've so often seen them have. And like, to me, he's defined the league this season. Just him coming in and boosting Portsmouth and that big coup that they got from Wigan, I think. So yeah, he's obviously not, in terms of quality, definitely not the best player in the league. I'm not saying he is, and obviously he's not even in the team of the season, I don't think. So bit of an outside shout, but just in terms of what he meant for Portsmouth, I'll have to give it to him.
I think both of them are fair. I'm going to go with, in fact, a player that's so good, I forgot his name earlier, Dion Charles for Bolton. 16 goals. I think he's. I know he's had struggled with injury for a little part of the season, but I think what he brings to that Bolton side, I think you can't deny the quality and how much better they look up front. Yes, we mentioned about the strikers that come off the bench and just sort of see out the result, but ultimately the work is already done by Charles and alongside Collins. But before Collins came in, mainly just Dion Charles in terms of the goals, in terms of the assists that he's been getting, and yeah, in terms of his performance on the pitch, I think has been crucial for Bolton. Yes, ultimately it came to nothing, but for them to get a solid third place finish, I think is Charles is a big factor for that.
So I'm going to mention some honourable mentions before I say mine. We've got Cameron Brannigan. I think that's obvious. A captain,
Mr. Penalty,
Mr. Penalty, and Mr. Reliable in midfield.
Yeah.
Cole Piergianni. I think, as much as I hate him, I think he's a horrible person you wouldn't want to play against. Obviously Mason Clark of Peterborough, Harrison Burrows, Irene Cashin, and then the player I've gone for, Marlon Pack at Portsmouth.
Yeah.
Holding midfielders never get the credit they deserve.
Yeah.
He was my other one. It was between him and Mendes-Lang.
I think the experience.
That's what they all say.
The experience head has helped Portsmouth massively throughout the season, especially during. But they did have when you think they're going to falter, they didn't.
They had a couple of injuries as well, didn't they? But
a couple of injuries.
He was a consistent through that pack.
I don't remember him having a bad game throughout the season. Yeah. Consistent performer, a leader in the dressing room, covers a ground like a 20-year-old, even though he's now 33. And for me, I think Marlon Pack does a bit of everything, especially defensively, which is vital for the way Portsmouth play. So Marlon Pack gets my vote for player of the season.
Have you got an Orient player of the season?
Again, it's another holding midfielder, because I don't think we really had a standout performer. I went for Jordan Brown, Mr. I Love a Yellow Card. To me, I relate to him when I played Sunday League football. He commits the fouls, kicks everyone, does the dirty work, and then just gives the ball to better players. He scored some really nice goals, and he's starting to grow into the player Derby thought he was going to be when he was their captain. So for me, I went for Jordan Brown for Leighton Orient.
I think for Lincoln, I mean, Jamie will know it's obvious, isn't it? Like, how he didn't get an award, I don't think he got one at the end of the season awards, baffles me. Somehow Lucas Jensen got our Player of the Year, which, fair enough. He nearly got the Golden Glove and whatnot. But Ethan Arahan, if that man is not playing Championship football next year, someone's missed out. Like, he is seriously good. Like, ludicrously good. How Lincoln managed to pick him up from, I believe, was it St. Mirren they picked him up from, or something like that. Yeah. Absolute coup. Like, he's really good. And obviously holding mid, like, just, I think we saw he was suspended for a game. I think Lincoln still won, but there was such a noticeable difference with him not in the team than with him in it. And yeah, honestly, what Lincoln will do next year if he does go to the Championship, I'm a bit worried. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I mean, I was I didn't know who you was going to say when I forgot about the end of season awards, but yeah, Overham was going to be mine. It's like a defensive midfielder loving this, but yeah, he's superb. He really is, and he holds that team together so well. I remember there's that video of like an oldish chap. I think might be West Ham, and he wins that ball so much as he's like starting to cry. That's how I feel about him. He's just super.
Is it Everton? I think he's an Everton fan.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I don't know who he was talking about, but yeah.
It was United about Wan-Bissaka.
Oh,
really?
was it? Oh.
Well, Ethan Overhand wins that ball so much. Yeah, he's fantastic.
If Seb now comes out with Herbie Kane or Luke O'Connell or Adam Phillips, then we've got a midfield love in here.
If it's not Adam Phillips, I don't know what has happened here.
Yeah, not many people stood out, really, I'll be honest.
You
never guessed they'd finished in the playoff, would you?
No.
Sad fan base at the minute, man.
Yeah, let's go Phillips.
There we go. Midfield loving is complete.
Fantastic.
So our player of the season's done. So match of the season. Now, League One football, as we know, is not renowned for being on TV, and the games they did pick were average, shall we say, on the TV.
Games.
Yeah, and they were pretty poor, shall we say.
Yeah.
The Bolton versus Barnsley game on the second leg, especially, I must say, was very, very good, as was the Peterborough versus Oxford second leg. But the best game of Orient I watched this season is between two. I've picked a home and an away game. The home win against Bolton, 1-0, just purely because of the way we played. I could have said the 4-3 against Northampton when we somehow conceded 3 and then scored in the 96th minute. But my favourite performance was the 3-0 away win at Portsmouth. I don't think we got a more perfect performance, beating the league champions on their own patch with a squad that was missing its 3 best players. I couldn't pick a more perfect performance from our season.
In terms of games I've actually watched, it's very limited to the start of the season. So I picked up a job halfway through, which meant obviously I'm not able to actually watch the games. I just listen to them on the radio. But in terms of the actual games I've watched, it's not a League One game. It's obviously that 1-0 defeat to West Ham. Like just seeing David Moyes at the LNER Stadium. Were they Conference League winners? Was it? I can't remember what trophy it was they won. Like having them at the LNER Stadium. Mental, batshit crazy. So that was pretty cool. But the best Lincoln game of the season, I mean, sorry, Seb, but it has to be 5-1. Like when we like every single Lincoln City fan was just like, "What the fuck is going on here?"
As was I. Yeah.
Like it was just a bit crazy. So yeah, it has to be for me. It has to be that one. Obviously. Wasn't to be in the end with playoffs, but 5-1 against Barnsley today we'll always remember.
Yeah, I think I was at Lincoln United, like the non-league team at Lincoln that day. I think it was one of their FA Vars games, and I remember just every 5 minutes it was on the phone, and I was like telling the person, like the old fella next to us, and he was like, "It's what? I can't believe that!" And it was that's how I remember from that one. As much as I want to say Donny 4, Barrow 2, when we came from 2-0 down to beat Barrow, obviously that's League 2.
League One.
In a couple of seasons, hopefully.
Not in the Bristol Street Trophy, no.
Yeah. I'm going to go for Lincoln against Charlton. Lincoln won 3-1 back in, I think it was October. It was when Tom Shaw was interim manager, and they were really sort of struggling for points and struggling for a bit of energy. And then out of nowhere, it was a Tuesday night under the lights, and I always feel like that's so much better for football. I love a Tuesday night game, and the crowd was fantastic. Adelucan got his moment, scored, and then celebrated in front of Michael Appleton. Did a big somersault in front of him just to like stick it up him because he sort of fell out of favour when Appleton was there. So it was a lovely moment for that. He scored a brace, and they were electric. I mean, I think the crowd helped, but they were so good, Lincoln, on that day. And it's probably that, and then obviously like the Barnsley game and that run where they were winning 5-0, 6-0, that few games. Apart from that, it was the best performance all season for me. And yeah, it was great being in the stadium for that one. Lincoln Charlton.
That one was purely fueled by sheer hatred of Michael Appleton, wasn't it? Really, from that.
It was unbelievable, wasn't it? Where there was he scored and then just ran towards the Charlton bench, did a big somersault in front of them, and it was unbelievable.
My one. Well, I can't really look as far as the opening day, the 7-0 against Port Vale. You know, it's
You've only mentioned it twice. That's quite good for you.
Didn't have many more up moments than that.
Yeah, let's see if I can squeeze it anymore before I finish. I every time the goal went in, I was just sort of looking to my family saying, you know, is this real sort of thing? You know, it's 7-0. You just unheard of, really. Particularly on that opening day of the season. Particularly, we just had a new manager, a couple of new players, not quite sure what to expect, and we just go out and produce that sort of result. So that was definitely one for the history books. Also, I wasn't there, but a bit like you, Sam, I was watching the second leg, Bolton versus Barnsley in the playoffs, League One playoffs, and that was very entertaining. The Barnsley Bolton one, I was there as well, and although the result didn't go in my favour, it was a very exciting game.
I remember a similar feeling of what's going on when was it Lincoln played Barnsley? I don't know if we've mentioned that game, but
Seb leaves.
So
Go on.
Onto the final section. So looking ahead to next season, obviously, I think we can all agree League One is about to be the most competitive. I think we're going to see it in a long time. We've got Rotherham, we've got Birmingham City, we've got Huddersfield Town, we've got Stockport, we've got Mansfield, we've got Wrexham, and we've got Crawley Town entering the league. We've still got the likes of Bolton, we've still got Barnsley, we've still got Peterborough, we've still got Blackpool. So I've named 15 clubs there.
You've named half the division.
Crawley,
yeah. You never know with Wagme. You never know.
Crawley.
Well,
We're realistically looking at 13 teams going for top 6 next year. And what I want to know, I want to know your surprise package. So in terms of doing really well, and biggest disappointment. I know it's really tricky because it's literally the championship's not even finished. So a big disappointment and a biggest surprise.
I think biggest surprise is I mean, we were talking before we pressed the record button about the teams that are kind of like the sleeping giants of like Reading and Wigan and stuff like that. If they do well, I don't really think it's a surprise. Like we're kind of expecting them to push on. I think my biggest surprise, in a good way, you're kind of hard pressed not to say a team like. I mean, I don't want to sound biased, but Lincoln, like they've shown what they can do, and I think in terms of surprise, I'm probably going to go with Wickham. I think they've shown it kind of similar to Lincoln, but on a smaller scale. They've shown what they can do this year. I feel like not many teams took a lot of note, so I think they'll probably be one to watch come May time next year.
Yeah, I think I wasn't expecting a biggest surprise. I was hoping I could just say Rotherham are going to win the league, and that would do for this little section. In terms of, I guess, would it be a surprise if Wigan got in the playoffs? Because that was like my dark horse pick. I do expect Wigan to have a really good season, in a similar vein to Charlton, but I think I'm more they're the two, and I think it would be more of a surprise if Wigan were to do it. So I'd go for that as a surprise. I really do think Wigan will be knocking on the door for playoffs at the very least.
And your disappointment?
We'll come back to me on that one. You do your surprise, and
I haven't done my disappointment yet. Give me a set.
Surprise, I think I'm leaning towards similar to what Jim was saying. I think Charlton will push on. I know they're losing a couple of players, mainly George Dobson in midfield, but evidently when Alfie May went, clearly there was something that urged him to sign that deal, and the owners clearly are aspiring for the championship. Whether they do or not, I think they've got a good chance this season. I think the sides coming down are going to struggle. It's not like a basic, they've come back down, they're going to struggle back up. I think they are going to struggle. And they might be a little bit like Portsmouth, Charlton, sort of just linger around League One for quite a while and then just have one really good season. And I can see Charlton having one really good season next season. In terms of sides to be disappointed with, having bigged them up a little bit, I think I'm talking about between Bolton or Peterborough. I'm going to say Peterborough might disappoint a little bit. Losing Clark Harris, yes, he's not been involved too much this year. Losing Mason Clark, I know they've already brought in, I can't remember the name, but they've already brought in a winger from Harrogate, doing what they do, sort of redeveloping young players. But I can see them struggling. They've let quite a few players go. So, yeah, I think Peterborough would be my surprisingly disappointing.
My biggest surprise, I was going to be really biased and say Orient, but I know that's going to come back to bite me on the arse. So I was going to say Wrexham, but I was like, well, nobody really cares about Wrexham, to be honest, and everyone thinks they're going to do well. We're going to have a documentary about them and our league. So I am going to actually be bold. I am going to say Orient. Ooh. I honestly believe we've got one of the best managers in the league, personally, tactically especially. We've got Jordan Graham, who's arguably one of the best wingers in the league, to come back. We're going to have, hopefully, Dan Ajay fit for an entire season who can score goals. If Dan Happy stays, we've got a Rolls Royce of a centre-half. We just need a solid goalkeeper and another striker, and I think we've got a really good basis of a squad. And if everyone stays fit, I think we might be quite a good team.
Well, that's Orient relegated next year.
And then for biggest disappointment, I've gone for Huddersfield.
Oh, yeah.
There's a whole mentality shift needed at that football club, and I think they're coming into some of their fans, not all, I'm going to use some, are probably thinking, it's like Birmingham fans, we're too big for this league, or we've been in the Premier League. League One is going to be a tough old league next year, and there is a mentality at Huddersfield for the past 3 years of losing, and that mentality is hard to shift out of a club in one summer. Obviously, I think they've got a very good manager in Michael Duff now, but I think it's going to take 2 years to get Huddersfield in and around where they actually want to be.
I think obviously I need to do biggest disappointment as well. You mentioned, what was it, Huddersfield and the mentality shift, and immediately I thought, well, I'm going to change my pick to Birmingham because, I mean, aren't they like part owned by Tom Cruise? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Tom Brady owns 1% of the
Tom
club.
Brady, not Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise.
Not Tom Cruise.
Can we kick him off the podcast for that?
I can't remember.
Just remove him from stage.
Championship
NFL quarterback Tom Cruise.
Don't care. I don't get. Can you imagine Tom Brady at fucking Mansfield, man? Like Tom Brady watches the club he owns at fucking Crawley. Like I just like they're just not. I just can't see it happening. Like I really think Birmingham are going to struggle, and what annoys me most about that is that the Aston Villa fans I know are going to love every second of it, and that annoys me because those are annoying as well. So, yeah, Birmingham, I think, are going to be my disappointment. I really think they'll struggle to finish top half.
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult league to predict because there are probably about 15 teams that you could make a case for getting in the playoffs, really. Obviously, you've got your people like your Crawleys or your Mansfield, or you're looking at, and the teams that only just survived, you're looking at, well, they're going to really struggle. I guess in terms of a disappointment, someone I think maybe could get dragged into it who weren't this season would be Bristol Rovers, mainly just because so many teams have come into the division, both down and up, that are better than Bristol Rovers. That I think that's going to push them down a bit. And out of the teams who weren't involved in a relegation scrap this season, I think next season Bristol Rovers will get pulled into one.
No, I think that is a fair point. So that's the is it? That's the season.
That's
over.
That's it, right?
So, lads, thank you very much for the season. It's been a pleasure speaking with you every week, and we hope everyone has a lovely summer. Enjoy the Euros, up the England. Look after yourself, and thank you for all your support this season. And hopefully, we'll see you again next season.